Good morning, afternoon, evening,
and good night.
This is the JP Dinnell podcast, YouTube exclusive with myself, JP Dinnell, and of course, Lucas. What's up, brother?
What's going on, man?
How are you?
Still bearded. We got
I know, halfway.
I know we're a little more than halfway to the goal, which I'm super stoked about. You can still. Yeah, I'm a Bon Jovi fan.
Yeah.
He's going to have more hair than I will whenever we get this over with.
Maybe.
But if you sign up now, $100 donation to America's Mighty Warriors still gets you 4 weeks of nutrition coaching from Jonathan and Ann Montgomery at First In. But the opportunity to win that muster ticket has passed you by.
Wah, wah.
Yep, somebody's going for free to muster 020. And if we get the money before then, they'll actually get to see in person my baby-faced self. Lucky
awesome.
Scoundrel.
I know. Let's go.
Yep. So we're back doing Q&A.
Yep.
It's been a wild ride of a bunch of podcasts where I got myself into a running challenge. Can I tell you what motivated me to do the half marathon?
Yes.
Because you said a 10K, and I felt like you said 10K because you knew that it was safe. One, because I think you knew you had the ability to do a 10K pretty easily, and also that there might have been a part of you that was like, oh, Lucas won't do this. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going half. I'm going half because I'm going to punish us both for this idea that we should do this. Yep. I'm going to make it hard for everybody.
Yeah.
That was why.
You know what's really cool about like friendship and when you get to know people?
What's that?
Is that you fell right into my trap.
Yeah, I figured that like that was it. That we
I had
would
already
get pushed.
I had already decided in my mind I was going to do the half or full marathon.
I figured you would not do the full, but I thought I could get you easily to agree to the half because one, it would be enough to push you.
Yeah.
And obviously where I'm at from a running perspective, that for me to do a full marathon in 11 weeks was unrealistic.
That's actually not true. But bro, there's actual programs for it. And then
I know.
Between the relationships that you and I have with all the Jocko Fuel and First Form athletes and then Rob Jones and Cody and all these guys.
I get that. My thing is not like I couldn't have trained for it and gotten physically in shape for it. But with the amount of time it takes to do a 15 to 18 mile run, like finding 3 hours in a day to carve out when what we're talking about now is we've got fall coming up with all the stuff we're having to do, all the rehearsals and things we're going to have to get ready to be doing and all the planning meetings we're going to have for end of year and the beginning of year next year. And then all of this stuff around this pretty important day in our faith, Christmas, like everything that we had to do there. I'm looking at that and I'm like, I bet it would be that I could get to a place where I would feel comfortable doing a half and running the whole thing, knowing that I will probably not run more than like 8 to 10 miles until the day of that thing, right?
My buddy at church when we lived in Mississippi, who was just like, hey, man, I'm doing a 10K tomorrow. You should do one with me.
Right.
I was like, okay. And I hadn't ran in years.
Right.
So I think you need to give yourself a little more credit. The human mind is incredible.
I would agree.
Now, would it be painful? For sure.
Yeah, but the pain is not the thing I'm most worried about. Like the time commitment and relation to like where everything is at from a planning perspective and where I'm at from a familial perspective.
I mean,
right?
bro, you could also half butt your training. And
I could one cheek it.
Yeah, you could one cheek it and go.
Yeah.
Knock out a marathon. Now you're not. We're going to be setting PRs.
No. I mean, finishing the marathon would be a PR in and of itself. But the other thing is, like, and we talked about this a little bit, in my lifetime, I have never run more than a 5K. And I think this is one of the things that kind of separates these type of athletic goals for you and for me, is because at least at some point in your life, you have evidence of your capability for doing a 10K or a half marathon or something like that, because you actually have done it.
Part of completion and graduating buds in third phase is you had to run a half marathon.
Right. So I don't there is nothing in the back of my mind that's there. Now,
got it. Okay.
I do have, you want to, somebody's like, oh, you can't deadlift 500 pounds. Like, part of me is like, I probably could get it up. Like, I couldn't do it twice, but I think I know the technique well enough. I know stuff well enough to where I might not be able to do it, but I would really scare whoever like bet against me to be able to do it if I had to go do it one time right now.
And you would get yourself there within a month.
No doubt. And mentally, like, not only have I done it before, but mentally my body would be like, we can freaking do this. Yeah, especially if there's more than like 2 nickels on the line, right? So that is like, that's there. But it's not with running. And it's never the cardio that I've done before. Because like when I've done cardio, when it was for bodybuilding, it was the Stairmaster, or it was an elliptical machine, or it was like heavy weighted stuff and like hopping between things to keep
doing it to lose fat, to stay lean for bodybuilding. Yeah.
Right. And then with the strongman competitions, it was sprints. Because like nobody like they're not timing strong guys for a quarter mile. No. And even when we're doing, or when we would have to do like medley lifts, right? Your thing is probably only like at max 30 yards away. So you're running 30 yards, you're picking something up, and then you're running back 30 yards if it's the same distance. But a lot of these things, like the weight increases, but the distance decreases. So the first thing might be 100 pounds, and you got to take it 30 yards, and the second thing might be at the whatever, the 15-yard mark or whatever. But now it's 250 pounds, and now you got to take that and put it on the platform. So. And the farmer's walk and things like that, they're typically not more. I mean, some of them are 20, 25 feet. Very few of them are going to be like that 30-yard mark where you're walking 90 feet with something. So like the sprints or those kind of things. My first training for the run, I did not warm up. I jogged a third of a mile with the very nice jogger that y'all got us as a baby gift. I got a significant cramp in my hamstring while I had already had a gallon of water to drink that day. Oh, that's awesome. But I probably depleted my electrolytes looking at what that ratio was. So I got there. I ended up getting to kind of that 3rd mile marker. It took me 4 minutes with the cramped hamstring. I turned around, walked back to where my wife was, and then we walked for like, she was like, I was like, I have to walk out whatever cramp I just got. And so we finished my, 45-minute outdoor workout like that. And I texted Rob Jones and was like, help. Yeah. This was, because I'd already told him that like we had committed and what we're doing. And then I told him I was going to go out and train for the first time. And he asked me, how'd I do? Yeah. It's like, not good.
So if you're wondering what Lucas and I are doing.
Yes.
There's an event coming up on November 23rd.
To honor those.
Yep. Yeah. And so Cody created that. He, shares it on a podcast that we just recorded with them about the driving force behind it. But you can go to echelonfront.com, click on events, scroll down, and it will show you the virtual to honor those. Click on that, give you some more information. It's a virtual run, meaning you can run it anywhere in the world. It's only $50 to sign up for it.
And you get a sick t-shirt.
You get a sick t-shirt and coin.
Yeah.
And so you can choose to run a 1K, 5K, 10K, half marathon, or full marathon.
Yep.
And they'll probably add in like a 50-mile run or something like that for guys like Andrew Paul
has something to do.
And so while Cody was on the podcast, we were talking about it.
Rob talked about it in his episode a little bit too.
Absolutely. But this is where our commitment came into it. And it's kind of hard not to after you hear all those things that Cody was talking about in regards to his mindset and not letting that voice get a vote anymore. And if that voice of weakness does creep in and says, I don't want to go do the run, he goes, the run's happening no matter what. Because he made the contract, signed the contract with himself. He's created the plan. And I love how he's like, yeah, if that voice creeps in and if it's there long enough trying to convince me not to do the run, he goes, I do the run with no headphones in. Just zero music, nothing, as a form of like, trying to program and trying to create habits to reprogram his thinking about those things, just to be more mentally disciplined and to do those harder things. And
I just want the t-shirt.
Well, it's funny. It's like you hear all that stuff with Cody, and it's a good reminder that we all can be a little more mentally disciplined.
Yeah.
And that's where it came, where I was like, yeah, Lucas, you can do like a 5K. You can walk, jog, run. You're like a lot of walking, maybe jogging. And we're kind of going
I would
back
do the
and
walk
forth.
jog for a 5K. Yeah.
And then I think I said at least like a 10K or something like that.
You started with a 10K and then I pulled down to a 5, I think is what it was.
Yeah. And then but then as you thought about it, you asked a legitimate question. You're like, hey, do you think there's enough time for us to practice and get ready to do a half marathon? And I was like, yeah, absolutely.
It will be the farthest I've ever run in my life.
It's going to be awesome, man.
Yeah.
It's going to be a really cool thing because not a lot of people, like if you look at the numbers of people that have ever ran that far, like actually like jog, run, not walk, but like jog and run that far, there's not a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm moving into a new category. I'm not going to get a sticker to put on my rear window or anything like that, but
I would scrape it off your car.
Yeah. So today was my first like what I felt like legit running day.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I walked outside, 20% chance of rain, and then downpours.
Came 100%.
Come on. So I was sent very kindly by somebody on the Echelon Front team who heard me talking about the Aftermath shirt. I got sent one of those. I was wearing the sweat-activated Aftermath shirt, and I walked out into the rain, and Kirsten's talking to me, and she's like, "Are you going to run?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to run." So I ran about 2/3 of a mile, came home because I'm doing this like on this trail across the street so that if something does happen to me, because I'm old and riddled with age, that I can, she can see me waving the white flag from the windows of our house and come pick my decrepit behind up from wherever it is. But I do about 2/3 of a mile and I ran home. And she's got like a towel and stuff because she saw me running. She's like, "You okay? Like, are you giving up?" I was like, "No, I've got my phone and my headphones in my pocket. I'm already drenched. I just need you to hold on to this." Yeah. My watch is waterproof. My heart rate monitor is waterproof. Back out there on it. And then essentially all I did was like run 1/3 of a mile and then turn around, walk back to the starting place. I was running into the wind and then doing the same thing again.
That's awesome. That's a great start.
I don't know if that shirt is sweat activated or if it's water activated though, because you could see the Aftermath and the Got Some like so good on the shirt. And I took a magnificent picture of it that I'm very proud of. Yeah. But I do, there was some hesitation in posting it because I was in a downpour, and it would be really easy for people to just be like, "Oh,
yeah, maybe."
There's that.
But you know what you were doing in a downpour? You're running, so who cares?
She got a video of it, and I think she posted it on Facebook, and it's me across the street. There's just like walking in the rain, and then it's a picture of her eating Cheetos.
That's amazing.
And then just like putting the towel in front of the door.
I've thought about this a few times, and because I'll get comments on like lifting videos or workout videos that I do, and like people correcting my form if I'm like barbell curling 135,
right?
And it's always the people that is like when you click on their profile, you're like, I'm curling more than you can probably squat, but thank you for your advice. Yeah. But life's full of that. My parents always taught me like, hey, people of value and people who matter aren't going to be criticizing you.
So maybe this is where we go with today's Q&A.
Let's go there because
how do you get past those criticisms from people that really don't matter, but will still, they kind of rent some space in your head.
Yeah,
sometimes,
maybe, but you have to be aware of it. That's the first step. Guys, I'm listening to some of the things that we've talked about this episode and thinking back to other things, and then that it prompted that thought in my brain of like, hey, now here's the deal. Nobody, so what you just shared.
Yeah.
Do you think someone like our buddy Will up at First Form, who I've read stuff of his profile and everything, do you think
Will has a difficult pronounced last name? Will.
Yes. Yeah. Do you think that if you posted that picture on Instagram, do you think a guy like him who's in incredible shape, like just will randomly decide, I'm going to run 100 miles. Like that's his goal in life, is to be so healthy that he can go do whatever challenge. Just did a half marathon. I'm sorry, a half Ironman recently.
Okay.
Does all these things. Do you think someone like him would comment on your post and be like, it's only wet because it's raining?
No.
Exactly.
Yeah, because he has better things to do with his life than be a troll.
Exactly.
Right.
And he's going to be encouraging you.
Yeah.
It's going to be the person that's not running And or maybe they are athletic and could run, but they're insecure about their inabilities to do something.
Yep.
That's going to take the time to make that comment.
So what's interesting to me about this is like, okay, so I feel like I know that, right? Like I have the knowledge that that's the case, right? That. I'm also not somebody who posts a lot online outside of like our podcast, or I used to post a bunch of pictures about Kirsten and I had this joke that there were a lot of things in life that she was always never letting me do. And so I would just take random pictures of her. Just like, she would just be like walking, and I was like, this is what my wife looks like when she's always never letting me have an actual Thor hammer and wear a cape everywhere. And then I would have like this really dumb post about it. And a lot of people would like it, and she would look at her phone and she'd have like 50 notifications from Instagram. She's like, what's this about? And it was just a picture of her walking through a Walmart, or I would just look at her and be like, hey, honey, smile. And she'd give me like a really beautiful smile. And then I would just come up with this ridiculous scenario. I'd save myself from saying a word that would have got us banned there. Save myself. Yeah. So, but I would just come up with this ridiculous scenario and then just put it out. And she would see this picture of her, like, oh, her new husband just posted this really great picture of her smiling, and then she'd click on it and it was like, this is what my wife looks like when she's always never letting me buy snowshoes and REI in the middle of summer when I really think that they could be practical, but she's telling me I'm never gonna.
And they're on sale.
Yeah, right. So like all of that stuff would be there, and people would be commenting and be like, oh, I can't believe she does that to you. That's so rude. So those are the things that I was consistent. Like, I'll post about that, and then I'll post about our podcast. Those are the things that I consistently post about. It's interesting to me that even knowing all of that stuff, and really with all the social media stuff that we do with our podcasting suite and stuff from the church, we coach people on how to build their social media platforms. And like, I get interviewed by some folks like about that, or ask these questions about like, all right, so how do you deal with these negative comments? We deal with this type of negative comments all the time on the podcast. Don't bother me at all, right? Yeah. Like, water off a duck's back.
Cool.
When it's something that I am insecure about with my athletic ability when it comes to running, and that, part of me is like, all right, so from especially after talking to freaking Jay Warner Wallace, like, I don't want to do the look at me post in any way, shape, form, or fashion, or I'll crawl in a hole and die. So like, I don't want to do anything that doesn't come across as like just pure humility, but like, not wanting to do the look at me post is part of an apprehension. Well, the second thing is like, people are going to say it's just, I was like that because it just got wet and I didn't actually work out. Why does that bother me? Why does it bother me to the point where like, I'm already projecting what the internet is going to say?
Because there's
some where like it almost makes me not want to post the thing
because
already.
There is some truth to that. You don't know if it's sweat or rain either. That's why you're thinking that, because there's some actual truth to that.
Oh, there 100% was some truth to that.
So, but at the end of the day, who cares?
Who
gives a care?
Who gives a care?
Yeah. Beggars can't be choosies.
Yeah.
No, like,
I do know that baby drool will activate it, because it was partially activated by my 4-month-old.
Yeah, so I think, man, here's the deal. I think it's an awareness thing. Once you're aware of it, you'll become more and more and more and more aware of it. And it's one of those things where you just like, you realize it doesn't matter.
So is it ultimately like a comfort thing? Like, it's something that you have to push through and get used to?
Yes. It's a security thing. Like, you're secure, and like,
it's just weird that I have an area where I'm insecure when I thought that I didn't.
Yeah, I think every human has that. Like, we all have those.
I'm having to do an honest self-assessment of the fact that like, that's the case.
That's why we should do those regularly.
I'm also wondering like, how much of it is related to, as this turns from Q&A into my therapy session, how much of my let's say apprehension, right? We'll call it that because that sounds nice, to running and stuff like that, is that there is like some bit of insecurity that's like deep seated within there, or if it's just like what I had said before, that it's truly didn't have anything to do with like what my goals.
I don't think there's an insecurity with running. You're not afraid. I know. I will factually tell you that you're not insecure with running.
Sweet.
And here's why. You're not insecure when it comes to trying new things and doing hard things.
No, I'm not.
You're not.
Yeah, not with that.
Here's what I think it is. And you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, and then we'll go down that whatever path that is.
Yep.
I think there is a natural insecurity with your physical abilities currently, knowing what you used to be capable of?
That likely plays a factor.
Because I think it's very strong. Yep. Because you've done very well in strongman competitions. You had some records, right?
Yeah, I've done some
you've done some pretty cool stuff. Okay. You also did bodybuilding. The
one in that.
Okay,
right?
Yeah. And so,
one in powerlifting.
Yeah. And so my dad did bodybuilding and bodybuilding shows. And one of the things that my parents were very intentional with was us not getting like negative self-image over our bodies.
Yeah.
Because my dad saw that in bodybuilding. My mom saw that as a personal trainer. They were both personal trainers. That was a very big thing. Mm-hmm. Now, part of that generated some income to them because that's, people are insecure with how they look. They hire trainers to fix them, blah, 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 to make them better. I remember, and you're going to laugh at this. I was in high school, like, I graduated and I was like, 135, 140, right?
Yeah, I think it was 136.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was shredded. Like 6 to 7% body fat.
Yeah.
And there was a few times it actually dropped like below 5%.
Like unhealthy almost.
Yep. Yeah. And my parents were like, hey, blah, blah, blah. Because I was doing so many physical activities and had a super high metabolism.
Have this bucket of Crisco, please.
Yeah. They were, just like really trying. And I remember one time I was like squeezing my skin and I was like, oh, like I'm like this fat. My mom got mad. Mm-hmm. She was like, that's skin. And I'm like, yeah, but like it's thick. And I'm like, she's like, because it's skin on skin. Like you're folding your skin. That's not fat. She's like, you are not fat. None of you guys are fat. Like you can't think, because she was, and I'm actually glad she got intense about it because it was a good little like, oh, like, bro, I actually thought there was fat.
Yeah. In between those skin folds. Yep.
Yeah. And so I think because of some of that stuff that you did, subconsciously it's a little bit of there, and you did well in these physical categories. Yep. And now you're doing something that you're not good at.
No.
And so we have those insecurities like pop up. We've talked about this before. I don't think on a podcast, but you and I have talked about the 4 levels of consciousness, right?
Yep.
Unconsciously incompetent. You don't know what you don't know. It's like the brand new white belt that's like, oh, I'm gonna, and they're just like spazzing out, you know. And then it's consciously incompetent, meaning you're not good at something.
Right.
And this is the point in life that most people quit.
Yeah, when you realize that you suck at something.
Yeah, you're like, oh, I'm not good at this.
It's why the white belt doesn't make it past the second year to push towards their blue belt.
Most time, and that's most of the time why blue belts, now all of a sudden they're a blue belt, and there's a little bit of pressure, and they're like, oh, I'm actually really not good.
Yeah.
Like I'm a blue belt, but compared to purples and browns
I'm still
and blacks.
getting tapped by white belts, and now all of a sudden that's
that's why most of them. That's why most of them quit.
Yeah.
Blue belts, they call the
attrition
blue belt
rate
blues. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And so yes, it's funny. It like correlates because it's unconsciously incompetent white belt. You're like, well, I'm having fun, blah blah blah. You get promoted. Now you're all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm a blue belt. I think I should know all these things, but I actually know that I don't know all these things, and that's why most people quit. And then you have consciously competent. You have to think about what you're doing. You do it well, but as long as you think about it, you're intentional, you're mindful, boom, you're good to go.
You're good to go.
And then the goal is to be unconsciously competent, meaning you're so good at doing something you don't even have to think about it.
Yeah.
It's something that you could just do without looking. You could do it in your sleep.
That's like what Troy was talking about with the guys that like can hit a killer golf shot or whatever when he was talking about the mental management program. Yeah, that they knew what to do with the shot, but they weren't doing the mental game on the approach.
Yep.
That everything about it, like they could walk onto a golf course and annihilate anybody without thinking about it, but like having to stop and to do that was what was preventing them from going to the next level, kind of a thing. Yeah.
Yes, 100%. And so right now you're consciously incompetent with your running ability.
Yeah.
Before it was kind of like, I don't know, maybe running would suck. Maybe, I don't know.
I got to be really coy about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you go out for a run and you're like, oh, this is not cool.
I do think that doing the first one where I got the cramp, Rob told me 2 things. He was like, maybe try it without the baby stroller.
Yes.
I was like, okay, potentially.
Because you're not running naturally.
Right. Yeah, it is weird how much my stride length was shortened by how far I could
you have
extend
something in
my
front
legs.
of you.
Yeah, extend my legs there. But the other thing was didn't warm up. Right? Like I just got to the path and then I was like, I'm just going to run for a little bit. Yeah, pretty much. And so I've not warmed up and I'm running with a baby stroller. And he was like, maybe try a warm up if you're going to do it with your family and run with a baby stroller. So today I walked the third of a mile before I came back and ran the third against the wind. And I will tell you, pretty good advice from Rob Jones.
Pretty solid.
Just that little 4 or 5 minutes of warm up was enough to where, turning back and running against the wind and then going back and doing it where I was just splitting it a third. Because his big thing that he told me, and this was one of the things that I think helped me mentally, was he was like, your number one priority in training is to not get injured. Yeah. You have too many things going on.
Yep.
What you're doing as a husband and a dad and as a pastor are too important for you to get injured trying to do this $50 run. And I was like, yeah. Fair enough. And so that was one of the things that was kind of in my head today. So I set what I felt like was a realistic goal, and I'm moving that. The other thing I think you're right on is a bit of that. Once you have held yourself to a certain standard, it's hard to mentally wrap your head around not being at that anymore. Yeah. And from the bodybuilding thing, I was under 5% body fat in the competitions that I won, and was asked by one of the guys that was training with me. He's like, you should do the hydrolysis thing to figure out how low you got. And I was like, one, I don't have the money to do it. And two, I don't have the energy. If they're going to put me in a bathtub, I'm going to fall asleep because it's everything I can do with the little amount of food that I'm taking in order to try to get here to do that. You're going to put me in a position to tell me to just go underwater for a little bit and relax. I'm going to fall asleep and drown. So there's no way that I'm doing that. But I don't know how low it got, but I do know that no matter what, that for me is the standard of what my capabilities are, of what I can look like. Mm-hmm. And so to the point where there have been some times, I've been doing yard work or whatever, and I'll, take my shirt off before I hop in the shower, and Kirsten's like, hey, sexy. And I'm like, my initial thought is, boy, you are gross for thinking that I look handsome. You've got something jacked up in your brain for thinking that this is desirable at all. And that's how it snuck in. And maybe it's because the bodybuilding stuff for me ended with a pretty nasty ankle injury. Yeah. And that there was some dysphoria there and some depression that caused. Or maybe it's just because I'm, what did Cody say? That I have, suffering, what did he call it? That I have sought after suffering, right? That there is part of me that's no, if you think that I'm cute, then that means you're disgusting and wrong in the head, which is a terrible. Yeah, I don't know, right?
Sought after.
Let me call it. Let me couch it how I want.
After suffering would be you actually signing up for the full marathon.
Signing up for the half marathon for me feels like it right now.
No, I agree. Actually, I know it's going to be because it's going to be a lot of work.
Yeah, for sure. But there is that
cool
thing that's in there.
No, I get it. But what's cool is with the interview that we just did with Jim, mm-hmm. It's that was my image, which was an actual idol. Yeah. That you've got to let go of.
All right, this has been the JP Dinnell podcast. Yeah, right.
We all have to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
And our listeners have to do that. All of our listeners, you and I included, we have idols that we shouldn't have. Yeah. And I love what Steven talks about this, because when he talks about it, Pursuit is this explaining idols, and he's talked about it a lot on the Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu podcast is, mm-hmm. Growing up about you shouldn't have any idols. He's like, that's one I'll never have an issue with. And I always did the same thing. I was like, I'm not going to worship some idol. But then you realize if you're putting something in regards to your time, effort, and focus above God, well, that's an idol. And what Jim was just talking about on this podcast, and I was just like, okay, and so I would just say to you as we were talking through these things, I struggle with a lot of that when I got out of the SEAL teams. Yeah. And even still now for what I do at Echelon Front, I feel like I have to have this image physically and all these other things to actually continue doing what I do at Echelon Front. And I'm not happy with my health. That's why I'm stoked that we're doing this. That's why, like when you said it, there was zero hesitation for me because I told you I was already going to do a half or full.
Yeah, you had the argument for the sake of having the argument, which was fun for the show.
Yeah. But I had already committed because I knew I needed to commit to something that was going to put me in an uncomfortable position to get my priorities back.
Yeah. That's the whole reason that we let the students that are like running that men's group talk us into 75 hard.
Dude, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it hasn't been. And one of them is getting ready for the fire academy, and he's got to run. He's not at a place right now where he knows, and he's got a few months to fix it, where he can fix his mile time to where he'll pass.
I can help him with that.
A perfect score. I can, you can, we've talked about it. He's finally getting to a place, because I told him whenever we were in the office on Thursday, I was like, hey, we're doing a half marathon. I'm not going to be able to do the Tough Mudder that we were talking about. It's also pretty expensive to do. And they were like, yeah. I was like, but I am running a half marathon now. Like, okay. And I was like, and I will pay for you two to do it. And they were like, and I was like, and you need to. Yeah. You've got to have a goal to get your mile time there. And I'm, it's that next thing, like having the next goal was what always drove me with my fitness stuff. And so like having this 75 hard for me ends in early October.
Perfect.
Right. So now I've got like, my thought was like, what's the next thing going to be?
Yeah.
Now I've already got it.
I know you have a program from Rob for running, and I'm getting one from Will. And
my program from Rob is basically me sending Rob text messages and him laughing at me.
Perfect. That's a good program.
And it works really, really well.
I was going to say,
he's good at it.
When I got done with 75 hard, the first time I did it, that was probably in a very long time the leanest and fastest I'd ever been. Like my cardio was through the roof because I started off just walking for those 45-minute workouts, and then I would do a walk, jog, interval. And then it was like a walk, jog, run, walk, jog, run, walk, jog, run. And then it became a walk, jog, run, walk, and it was just, and by the end it was warm up and then run. Yeah. For 45 minutes. But it was all at different paces. It was all intervals. And, and I remember like there's a few times like I would send like my paces to Justin. He's like, bro, you were cooking. Yeah. I was dipping down into the 5-minute pace for my quarter mile intervals.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it wasn't a quarter mile interval that you were just now doing nothing afterwards. It was, I would run that quarter mile at a 5-something pace, and then the next quarter mile I slowed it down to like a 9-minute pace, and then the next one it would be like a 12-minute jog, ish run pace, and then boom, sprint again. And it was cool to be able to get there. So
yeah, I do think that if it hasn't been for the last like month of this, that this would have been a much harder thing for me to do, because it was the the 45-minute walks. Right.
Yeah. So
and then,
75 hard
bike ride
brought you where you need to be for a baseline.
Because the bike ride, I think, is really what has upped my cardio in the last few weeks.
Yeah. And honestly, like, let's be really, really candid with ourselves.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
After the episode with Rob and then with Cody, like, how could you even be in a mental position to be like, yep, I want to keep doing things the way I'm doing them in my life?
Oh, I can convince myself to not do stuff like a champ.
I know you can. But when you listen to both of those,
right?
Why would you want to?
Yeah, I think it's different.
Could and want are two different things.
Yeah.
You could, bro, we can convince ourselves to do a lot of crazy things in life. Or I don't want to,
things, right?
But I actually, after listening to those episodes, it's really cool what God's been doing, like with other conversations, like my buddy Aaron I was telling you about, who did those every 4 hours, run 4 miles for 48 hours. And now he's training to do a 50-mile, trail run into the mountains. And then he's got a 100-miler after that. And then next October, he's running the rim of the Grand Canyon, invited me to do it with him. And I just laughed. But now I'm like, maybe I do that, like, yes, we can convince ourselves not to do things, but why would we want to? Because we know when we do these hard things, when we do these difficult things, that's where growth comes. And I think during these times, if we can also be intentional with, okay, you know what, Lord? I made this commitment to do these runs, but I'm also going to make a commitment to spend time with you. So when I'm going and doing these runs and I'm listening to praise and worship instead of any other thing, I'm not going to listen to podcasts. I'm not going to listen to music. I'm going to listen to praise and worship. And I'm going to have time alone with God while I'm on these runs. I think it's going to be cool.
Yeah.
Like these are the things that I need to be doing.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that we get to do it together, brother.
Yeah, man. It's going to be amazing.
If you guys want to join us
with commitment fingers,
you need to go to echelonfront.com, click on events, scroll down to the to honor those tab, click on it. It's $50. It's $50. You get a coin, a t-shirt.
You get to nominate somebody.
And that's the other cool thing.
Yep.
Is the money that they're raising from doing this is to send first responders to musters, to pay for their muster tickets, to be able to send them to them. And then also you get to nominate a first responder that you feel deserves to receive those scholarships. So I think it's pretty rad. It's an awesome thing. I'm glad Cody created this. I'm glad he called Rob Jones and said, hey, are you in or are you out? And Rob's like, I'm in. And he told him that they're doing the marathon. Cody's running it with
a weight vest,
25 to 30 pounds.
Yep.
Rob, double above the knee amputee, running it. It's going to be awesome.
Up to the Iwo Jima Memorial.
Yeah.
The last stand of the great John Basilone was right there on that. Like, so much Marine history happening right there. It's going to be super busted.
It's crazy. You just ruined it. So with that, we appreciate all the support that you guys give us. I hope you guys go out there, have an awesome week, put in the work, and remember to never settle. This has been the JP Dinnell Podcast, YouTube exclusive.